Welcome to the third episode of Transcend.
Today I have someone special, Shahul Karim, who has been, I'll say, employee experience enthusiast, a positive thinker or a thought leader, and also culture architect. So that's a very new phenomenon or new name which we hear when we're talking about driving organization culture. So just to give you a brief about Shahul, he has close to two decades of experience. He started his career from as a sales support and customer experience or customer service before he get into the people function role. Today he's working as senior vice president human resource in Firstsource and driving the corporate governance in people practice role or space, I will say. So welcome, Shahul, to this third episode of Transcend.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and hello, everybody.
So great. So I think today's topic is the role of organization culture on talent acquisition or talent retention. I'm sure this should be very close to your heart, right? So if you look at the role of organization culture with respect to building any organization of any size or within any industry, I look at organization culture in three larger perspectives. One, with respect to driving value for your employees, of course, how do they get into an organization fit or organization culture fit, and they get the opportunity to really excel themselves or perform. Second aspect is how you drive the culture drives the customer's experience or the return on investment the customer make on your product or services. That's very, very important aspect. And third, of course, any organization perspective to the shareholders, that how they see the organization growing, how they see they're maximizing their own return on their investment to the organization. So when you talk about culture or organization culture, it is a very significant impact, or how you build an organization over a period of time. And I personally feel that in today's scenario, when you talk about organization culture, especially into talent acquisition space, and there is a study from Deloitte which talks about that 90% of organizations face, the people culture or organization culture or engagement has a bigger challenge for them, and that has not changed significantly over the period of last few years. And of course, when you look at today's situation, when there is another study which talk about 90% of people who want to look for a prospective job or role, they want to look at organization culture through various platforms, and 46% of them, they go to platform like Glassdoor to understand how the people have been commenting about their own organization. Of course, this has become a normal trend nowadays. So when you look at current situation where the organization culture makes bigger impact on employee retention or employee engagement or talent acquisition in more specific terms, how do you see the role of HR has changed in last 2 decades when you assume the role in HR function to now? Over to you.
Yeah. See, organizational culture, to put it in perspective, it is a set of values. It's a set of belief. It's a set of attitudes, right? It's about how systems and policies and rules outline and influence, behavior within the enterprise or the organization, right? So it essentially extends, and like you rightly said, I mean, the culture reflects how employees, customers, vendor partners, stakeholders, how they actually experience the organization, how they actually start to experience the brand, right? Now, one of the very fundamental similarities, right, or key similarities between culture and goals is that both can help realize a mission statement or a vision statement, but it is actually not the same, right? And it's not the same because organization culture is created and formed through consistent and authentic and acceptable behaviors, within the organization. It is about how you do things at work. It is the verb It is an action item within the enterprise. Now, culture obviously, is important. I mean, I think any company today realizes that culture is important, right? And therefore, the question is, what are good qualities? How do you realize the qualities of great organizational culture? Can you actually see it and feel it? And the answer is yes, right? I mean, if you just break it down and go to an enterprise and look at the enterprise, depending on how aligned employees are to the company objectives, uh, uh, depending on how the environment within an enterprise is, right? If the environment is a culture of appreciation, if it is a culture of trust, if it is performance focused, if a company is hugely resilient, right? If there is teamwork and integrity and transparency, and if there is a psychological safety that exists within the enterprise, you can actually say that there is great that the culture is great and the organizational culture is actually superior, right? And and to your point on, how does HR look at it from a recruitment standpoint? How does HR actually look at it from an engagement standpoint? Just to quickly deep dive into it, right? I mean, today 77 to 80% of the workers consider a company's culture even before applying for a job, right? So let alone coming and interviewing, even before you even apply for a job, you're actually looking at the culture, right? You're looking at brand identity, right? That if somebody is wanting to leave a company and join a new company, you're actually looking at brand identity. You go to portals, you go to Glassdoor, you look at what people have to say about the brand before you even decide to apply for it, right? And obviously once employees join, it is about advocacy and net promoters, and how many of those net promoters do you have? And you will have a large flock of net promoters if you are actually providing a culture which is safe and secure and rewarding and a culture where there is a lot of respect, right? So yeah, it is interesting times. I think over the last several decades, if something has changed in enterprises, it is the fact that organizational culture is actually becoming larger than life. I mean, everybody is looking at it very, very differently, and clearly it is the most important thing as we go along and start to look at how we build a company.
Perfect. I think you rightly mentioned. I think when you talk about the value creation on the perspective of an organization, which actually consolidates as a overall general will of the organization, which is called in terms of culture, right? Of course, culture has a various meanings, or I personally feel is a general will of the people who are working in the organization. So culture is something which is not uh, something which is can be adopted on the top to the bottom. It's basically how you structure it and enable organization from top to bottom and bottom to top. I'm pretty sure that when you look at all three stakeholders, largely we spoke about employees, as you mentioned, even for the customers or vendor partners, and also for the shareholders. The important aspect is the trust, of course. And the second, of course, how you collaborate, how you look at the integrity, of course, that is very, very important aspect. Today, we talk about data privacy aspect have been coming in at various organizations are really failing on that, and there have been a lot of challenges. And I'm sure that everybody is aware that if any organization need to attract the talent, they need to really work on building a larger consensus on bringing that culture, which really people are
Yeah.
looking at.
No,
So
absolutely. I mean, today look at it, right? What is an enterprise supposed to do today? I mean, if you really want to have great organizational culture, you gotta be able to get the employee connected, to a purpose. I mean, the work needs to be connected to a purpose.
right.
Um, Today, workforce is looking at, how is diversity viewed within an enterprise? How inclusive is the enterprise? How do you give back to the communities that you operate in? How socially responsible are you, right? Gone are the days when you had a candidate who came in for an interview. In the past, a couple of decades back, it was a question of what is my salary, what are my perks, and what are my benefits. I mean, those no longer are the questions.
Right.
Today, a candidate wants to know, hey, are you a diverse organization? Are you an organization that is inclusive? What is your purpose, right? Why do you believe you're best in class? Are you socially responsible, right? Do you give back to communities? I mean, those are the questions that we really get from candidates today, right? And you can see that there is a shift in the way a candidate is actually evaluating an enterprise. And clearly, I think candidates pick and choose the company where they believe organizational culture is at its best.
Absolutely. I think, as you rightly mentioned, that people are becoming more aware, and the role of technology or internet era gives every information at the click of the button, right? So when you see around how the things are, right, how the organizations and people collectively are responsible towards bringing that inclusivity, diversity, openness, the atmosphere where you build an organization in terms of enabling everyone to be part of the innovations you drive, right? So I'm sure that that make a big impact when anybody looking to look for a job opportunity, as you rightly mentioned. Coming to the other side, when you look at the organization culture, how talent acquisition or retention impact the organization culture. So I'm talking about the vice versa, what we spoke about so far.
Yeah, no, it impacts. See, I think firstly, we've got to be very authentic in what we want, right? So for example, everybody states that, your values actually define your culture, right? And therefore you have to be very clear that you have to live the values. You've got to be able to display that behavior in your enterprise if you want the enterprise to be seen as a place of choice for the candidates. If you want to be an employer of choice, then you've got to live the values, right? You've got to be really genuine in everything that you're saying. Now, for attraction to happen, in fact, you actually have to display it, right? It's like you have to give before you can get. If you want to get good people, then you have to be able to demonstrate that you have an enterprise that is great. And how can we do that? I mean, we've got to, as a company, you've got to be able to excel in recognition. You've got to be able to enable, employees' voice within the enterprise. You've got to make your leaders responsible, and they have to be culture advocates, right? Everybody has to live by the company values, right? We say that, a value is not a noun. It is not something that you put on the intranet or the internet and forget about it. Your web page can't carry a set of values. You've got to live by the values, which means that values are actually verbs. You've got to do it. It's an action item, right? You've got to be able to foster good relationships and partnerships, between team members, right? And you've got to focus on learning and development. For example, you want candidates and you want your existing employees to see you as somebody who's nurturing, right? So if you want to be seen as an employer who nurtures talent, then you've got to be able to focus on learning and development, right? It has to be personalized. For example, the experience that either a candidate has or employee has, it has to be personalized to the extent that there is absolute relevance in every single conversation. Conversations have to be personalized, right? So there's a lot of reverse things, right? In the sense that uh, from an attraction and an engagement standpoint, you've got to be able to do some of these things like seamlessly in an enterprise to really get it right.
Absolutely. I think you rightly mentioned about it, because how you look at creating that value proposition when somebody joins the organization, how you can create that culture to bring that sort of platform for any incumbent who joins the organization, that you nurture them and they grow with the organization. So I'm sure that when we to look at in our kind of organization, which is like a startup, to scale up zone. So of course, the kind of opportunities you see in every organization, irrespective of the size, is how they align to the idea of the organization. What is the vision, mission, and the larger goals and objective with inclusivity? That is a much more bigger terminology organization should use, diversity and inclusivity. That's something which is uh, being best sold to the people who are going to look at joining the organization in future. So I think that makes huge sense. As you mentioned, that how organization need to look at communicating to the employees or prospective talent they are eyeing at. They have been trying various ways to communicate effectively how do you look at in the era of technology? Okay, has technology a say or can basically equip you better to showcase the culture an organization has or to a prospective candidate who's looking to join an organization?
No, absolutely. No, no. Technology plays a very important role. You know, today's the age of instant feedback, for example, right? I mean, gone are the days where feedback used to be collated eons later. You know, as an example, decades back, we used to do an annual satisfaction survey scores. Gone are those days. Today, we probably do real-time surveys. As soon as something happens, you're gathering that and giving feedback, right? And therefore, the question is, you know, how do you actually uh, showcase and bring to life the behaviors? If today the values are being lived in an enterprise, right? And if the values are being displayed, the question is, how do you bring it to everybody's notice? And the easiest way to do that is technology, right? Because technology has gotten so superior that you have best in class applications, including social media integration, which can happen where you have real time feeds on why we believe somebody's actually living the value. There are stories, there are life-changing events, you know, how you positively either impact an employee or how you've impacted an end customer or the customer, maybe what the shareholder and markets have to say about us in the way, you know, we're being agile and responding. You know, all of that is testimony to the fact that we're living the value. And the
Right.
ability to use technology to actually amplify that, right, in the form of communication is like a very, very important piece that you got to be able to amplify these stories, because what happens is that these kind of good behaviors breed better behaviors, right? Then people start to see this and then they realize it and then they want to start living that life also, right? And that's how infectious it is in a nice way, right? To say that, you know, people learn and people then want to start living the values. So technology plays a great role. Today you have apps which are, you know, clearly desktop enabled and mobile enabled and any device enabled, etc., right? So you can actually have people stay connected, and every time something good is happening, it need not be confined, you know, within your office space. You could be anywhere, but you could get a real-time alert that something amazing has happened at your workplace, and you read it and you get joy, and then it sort of motivates you to also come and sort of display that kind of behavior, right? So technology has a large role to play.
I think you're rightly, I think maybe experienced and implemented or adopted it. So we also see, through our platform, a major aspect which organization now look at it, how you can effectively engage and communicate over the period of application being moved from the sourcing stage to the person getting onboarded. So how you can automate a personalized communication process. And increasingly, most of the organization now also looking the other way around. They are seeking feedback from the candidate about their hiring process and interviewing process. That has been a change which I've seen in last few years, where organizations are not wary of taking a feedback and input from the candidates, because that's where they want to look at driving that value proposition in their talent acquisition process. So I'm pretty sure with advent of ChatGPT or generative AI, then how those can be leveraged to communicate effectively, smartly, proactively, and make an impact to demonstrate that value proposition to the prospective candidates. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think safety and security is a big thing for anybody who is joining an enterprise, right? And therefore, you know, for a candidate, I mean, the most unnerving times is, you know, the interview process. You know, so when you get in there, the question is that, you know, how do you make sure that you help candidates calm down, right? In the sense that if you are an enterprise that believes in nurturing your employees, which will also include, you know, prospective employees, then
Right.
how do you actually do that, right? And through technology, we've seen that it's possible. You know, you are actually telling your candidate how long your wait time is going to be, what are the steps of the recruitment process, what will happen after step one, what will happen after step two. You are actually automating to such an extent that they will be getting real-time updates on their phone on where their candidature is, right? I mean, technology has advanced to that extent where we are able to give real-time updates to the candidate. So it's amazing, how much we've sort of progressed in the last decade or so, at least on this front.
Great, thank you. So I'm sure that our viewers will have a lot of insight as they also look to drive the organization culture and also how that can impact in their process of delivering value to their employees and the candidates who are looking to join them. So thank you very much, Shahul, and taking time to come on this podcast, and really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alok, once again for having me here, and thanks everybody for viewing the podcast as well. Take care.
Thank you.